I think we've all been told at some point or another that stock plugins are all that you need, whether we're mixing or producing music. There's been quite a few of respectable engineers who've said something along the lines of that, and they've even gone as far as making mix tutorials only using stock plugins, which I think that's pretty cool. Honestly, I think that's great. And I really do believe this comes from a really good place. This is something that I believe in for the most part to an extent. But the truth really lies somewhere in the middle. It's not quite that simple. And I kind of realized that when somebody was looking at, one of my production tutorials and they noticed that I use a ton of third-party plugins. And in my head, I'm like, no, I don't. I use a lot of stock plugins. Then I take a look at my mastering chain and not a single stock plugin is on it. So yeah, go figure. And that kind of got me thinking. And that's why I kind of have a problem when people tell you that, hey, you only need stock plugins. If that were the case, why do those same people who say that, or say something along the same lines, go right back to their third-party plugins once they're done with their tutorial or done saying that and trying to encourage you to stick with stock plugins? Another issue I have with this sentiment that stock plugins are all that you need, a lot of the people who say it, they have their stuff ran through Analog Gear, or their source tones are just a lot better than what the majority of us are working with. Again, I really do believe this is coming from a good place, the people saying this, but not everybody has access to, good equipment that's going to get them the best source tones. Personally, I don't have the money or space to really record guitar. I was using a load box, but the amp that I'm using just isn't quite doing it. So I record DIs, and I sure as shit ain't running it through the stock amp sims that are on my DAW. Even though I love the DAW, they kind of suck. And let's face it, some genres are easier to mix than others. Genres that are very synth heavy are going to be a lot easier to mix than genres that are using heavily distorted guitars. I have a synth in my most recent song, and there's no plugins on it. I might have a delay, but I could probably add that delay within the plugin, but that's it. There's no EQ, there's no compression. It just fits, and you're not getting that with heavily distorted guitars or just recorded instruments that can be very volatile depending on what the instrument is. And in many cases, the way to deal with that particular instrument recording is to use a third-party plugin. Not all the time, but in many cases, third-party plugins will save your ass. My mixes have gotten a lot better just from experience in doing it, but they've also gotten better because of some powerful third-party plugins, Something like Soothe 2, that thing has saved my ass a bunch of times, especially on the collaboration side when you're getting sent tracks from everywhere around the world sometimes. I've been sent tracks across the country, and sometimes you don't know what you're getting. And Soothe 2 is just one of those plugins where there is no stock plugin counterpart. There's not even a real third-party counterpart that can match Soothe 2 ability. It's the reason why they can charge over $200 for that plugin. Now, yes, stock plugins, they are good enough. You can get some really good results with stock plugins. The problem is good enough, to me, translates into the bare minimum for a professional sound. Now, if you're an aspiring mix engineer, songwriter, or even producer, I don't think much of us are really striving just for bare minimum production value. Usually we're chasing for top-notch production or just greatness and excellence in general in what we do. So why would we settle at just stock plugins, the bare minimum? Now, before people kill me in the comments, let's backpedal a little bit and talk about stock plugins for a minute. All DAWs, pretty much virtually every single DAW out there, comes with really good quality stock plugins. I'm not denying that. Some of my favorite plugins are stock. And that's what's very interesting about stock plugins. Even though a lot of us have third-party plugins, a lot of professionals, it seems like we have a couple of stock plugins that we always go back to. For instance, TB Fix 4, this comes stock with my DAW. It's an EQ plugin, and for whatever reason, it just tackles more precise dynamic cuts, moves, better than something like iZotope's Neutron. The EQ on that's pretty great, but for whatever reason, TB Fix 4 does a better job when it comes to the more surgical stuff. And the plugin's kind of like a dynamic EQ and a multi-band compressor in one. It's actually very cool, and it's something that I always go back to. And there's some really cool stock plugins that will come with your DAW. Mixcraft, for whatever reason, has their own version of the Studio Devil bass amp sim, and that's a very quality amp sim that kind of just comes stock with your DAW. That's really cool. And if I did not need more distortion, I'd be using that amp all the time. And now that I've kind of given you a rundown on how I feel about third-party plugins, stock plugins, let me kind of go over how I think everyone should approach using plugins and going about potentially getting third-party plugins. At first, you should only be using stock plugins. There's absolutely no reason to get third-party plugins until you run into an issue or you hit a wall. That's when you would want to look into third-party plugins. Say you get a track, we'll say a vocal track. It's out of tune. You can't get any retakes, and the performance, the emotion behind it was great, but the pitch is just not where it needs to be in your stock pitch correction software choice. It's not cutting it. It's distorting the sound. It's warping in a way that sounds unnatural, and it's not going with your vision. That's where you would buy something like Melodyne, which really is unrivaled as far as natural sounding and really quality. Autotune comes pretty close, but it's not going to have the control of Melodyne, especially the pro version of Melodyne. It's a really awesome plugin. That's kind of where you just bite the bullet, get that plugin, and then move on. And then in other situations, as they come up, this is not you don't want to get into a plugin addiction. That's where people will just buy third-party plugins and they'll have a ton of third-party plugins, and all they use is third-party plugins, and they've just blown their money on third-party plugins, and it's not worth it. You only want to buy plugins as needed. There's no reason to go out and buy a compressor if the compressors you're working with are already good. A lot of these compressors are not going to sound much better than each other. It's really, buying the plugins that you actually need. We don't want anybody becoming a plugin addict. We just want you buying what you need only when you need it. So that's kind of just it. I want to just rant a little bit about stock plugins and third-party plugins. A lot of what you're going to be doing, you could get away with stock plugins, but that's the bare minimum. And when you run into those situations where you need a third-party plugin, that's where it's kind of like, okay, you might want to spend the money on it if there's no way getting around it. If you're broke, obviously don't be buying plugins if you can't afford them. But I mean, there's just plugins, like I said, like Soothe 2. If you're having an issue, resonance issue, and nothing that you have can tackle it, it's probably worth grabbing that plugin. If you can afford it, it'll make your life easier. Any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.